This wasn't a simple crisis. It didn't just happen overnight. It was a controlled demolition of trust, carried out in plain sight over many years. What happened in 2008 wasn't an accident. It was the inevitable result of a system woven together step by step over decades. A system built on greed, deliberate blindness, and fake money sold as innovation. And when it collapsed, it wasn't just Wall Street that fell. People lost their homes. They lost their jobs. They lost their savings. They lost their life plans. But the most painful part was this. Those who caused it paid no price. On the contrary, they became even richer. If you were an ordinary person in 2008, you probably didn't even understand what was happening. One week the headlines said, "Home prices are soaring." The next week, banks were collapsing. Pension funds were evaporating. The stock market was crashing. And then suddenly you looked up and saw it. The government was handing out billions of dollars. But not to you. Not to the people who lost their jobs. Not to the people who lost their homes. Directly to the institutions that caused this disaster. Today, this crisis is explained to you with words like subprime, CDs, securitization, systemic risk. But strip away the fancy terminology, and the story is very familiar. Money, power, and people who never had to answer for their actions. Let's rewind. In the early 2000s, Wall Street was unhappy. The tech bubble had burst. Money had slowed down. And banks were looking for a new money machine. They found it in housing. In America, buying a home wasn't just a dream. It was an obsession. An addiction. And Wall Street turned that addiction into mass production. That's how mortgage-backed securities were born. They took thousands of home loans, bundled them together, and sold them to investors saying, "Look, this is safe." There were real houses. Real people. It sounded solid. But here was the problem. This machine constantly needed more credit. And at some point, there were no people left who could actually pay. So what did they do? They lent to people who couldn't. No income verification. Adjustable interest rates. They didn't care about the risk. "We've spread the risk," they said. "Nothing will happen," they said. Something happened. Then things got even darker. On top of those loans, they started placing bets. With credit default swaps. They invested in people failing. The system reached a point where, for some people, homes collapsing meant profit. And the credit rating agencies, who were supposed to be referees, they were part of the game too. Banks paid them. And they stamped toxic products with AAA ratings. No one asked, "Where is this going?" Because everyone was making money. By 2005, the bubble was fully inflated. Home prices were far, far above wages. Housing developments were rising in places no one lived. People were selling homes they hadn't even moved into yet. It looked like wealth. But it was hollow. Then interest rates rose. People couldn't pay. Foreclosures began. Assets that were very safe on paper turned into trash. And the domino effect started. Lehman Brothers collapsed. Bear Stearns was gone. AIG was shaking. These weren't small players. They were the pillars of the system. Banks stopped trusting each other. Money flow froze. Markets crashed. In a single year, Americans lost $19 trillion. And then the government stepped in. But not for the people. For the system. Hundreds of billions flowed to the banks. Trillions were made ready. People lost their jobs. They lost their homes. But on Wall Street, bonuses were handed out. This wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. And it showed one thing clearly. This system doesn't exist to protect you. It exists to protect itself. Years passed. But the system didn't change. Central banks printed money. They inflated the markets. Those who owned assets won. But wages stayed where they were. Inequality grew even larger. Then the pandemic came. Even more money was printed. For a while, we thought. Maybe we've finally figured it out. We hadn't. Inflation came back. Interest rates surged. Debt became heavier. And the old cracks appeared once again. Today, the system is even more fragile. More debt. More hidden risk. Crypto, fintech. New names, old games. The only thing that never changes is this. The bill is always sent to ordinary people. So the lessons from 2008 are clear. Complexity is not safety. If someone is winning, someone else is carrying the risk. And no one is going to warn you. When the game stops, there will be bailouts. There will be inflation. There will be chaos. But there will be no justice. Real wealth is not money. It's knowledge. The ability to understand what's actually happening. Because history doesn't repeat itself exactly. But if you don't understand it, it will crush you anyway. If this narrative opened a new window for you, subscribe. History has the answers. I'll show you where to look.